The wind cut sharp through the cemetery oaks, tugging at black coats and whispered prayers. Rain hadn't come, but the sky stayed bruised and heavy, like it might break any minute. Officer Luke Harlan stood awkwardly at the edge of the service, one hand gripping the leash of his aging K9, Juno. People stared. One woman whispered, "Who brings a dog to a child's funeral?" But the mother, Delia Quinn, just snapped, raw and broken. "You can't bring a dog to a funeral. The sound of dirt hitting a coffin isn't loud, but it's final. A flat, damp thud, the kind that lingers in the chest." Delia Quinn didn't flinch when it began. She just stood still, both hands clenched into the sleeves of her coat, staring at the white roses crushed beneath the first shovelful. Around her, the crowd was hushed, too hushed, like no one dared breathe. Luke Harlan didn't belong there. He knew it. He stood back, the brim of his patrol cap low, one hand on Juno's harness. She was calm now, tail still, ears forward, alert but silent, just like always. He hadn't planned to bring her to the funeral. Hell, he wasn't even supposed to come. But when he clocked out that morning, Juno had refused to leave his side, whined at the door, rested her muzzle on his boots like she did on nights when the dreams got too loud. He figured maybe she knew something he didn't. She usually did. The priest's voice faltered on the final verse. Someone in the back sobbed, and Delia, still as glass, finally turned, her face pale, her expression unreadable. "You shouldn't have brought her," she said quietly, approaching Luke. "I know," he said. He wanted to explain that the department sent flowers, that he came alone out of respect, that Juno had insisted, but none of that mattered. Not when grief had hollowed out the space behind Delia's eyes. "Is this your idea of some small-town comfort? A dog at a kid's funeral?" Her voice was bitter now, cracking around the edges. "This isn't therapy hour." Luke swallowed. "She led me here, Delia. Wouldn't let me leave the cruiser without her." "I don't give a damn what your dog wants," she snapped, turning to go. She didn't know my daughter. But Juno didn't let her pass. The K9 shifted, let out a single low whine, and moved deliberately, not to the fresh grave, but further down the line, for headstones away. Delia stopped. "Call her off." But Luke didn't. Couldn't. Something in his gut twisted. Juno stood rigid now, nose down a small grave marker. The stone was old, covered in moss, edges softened by rain. But the name was still clear beneath the grime. Marissa Quinn, 2006 to 2013. Sweet girl, sweet voice, sweet silence. Delia's breath hitched. Luke glanced at her. Her face had drained of color. "My daughter," her voice caught. That's not the one we buried today." "No," Luke said softly. "It's not." The funeral had been for Emily Quinn, age 10, died in a house fire 2 weeks ago. The blaze had gutted the kitchen and spread fast. No foul play suspected. Faulty wiring, they said. No survivors in the house. Delia hadn't spoken publicly since. But here they were, standing over Marissa's grave, another Quinn child, one the town didn't talk about much. Luke had transferred to Renville 5 years ago, just in time to hear the rumors. Delia Quinn had lost a daughter before. Young, tragic, sudden illness. And then came Emily, bright-eyed and full of questions, like she'd been sent to fill some space too big for grief to hold. He looked at Delia now, her hands trembling at her sides. "You don't visit this grave?" he asked, instantly regretting the question. She didn't answer, just turned and walked quickly away, arms wrapped tight around herself. Juno remained planted at the headstone. The reception was in the church basement. Ham sandwiches, lemonade, coffee too weak to taste. Luke didn't stay long. No one wanted a cop there, not in uniform, and especially not with a dog who kept staring at empty corners. He walked Juno behind the building, toward the tree line where the cemetery thinned into woods. She kept glancing back toward the graves, her movements slow, uncertain. Not like her. Not like the scent-driven, laser-focused K9 she'd always been. Luke crouched beside her and ran a hand along her back. "You caught something," he murmured. "Didn't you, girl?" She licked her lips. tail twitching once. Her eyes didn't leave the trees. Back at the station, Luke pulled Emily's file again, even though he'd read it a dozen times. Incident report, residential fire. Date, June 17th. Victim, Emily Quinn, age 10. Survivors, none present. Determined cause, kitchen electrical panel failure. Location, 42 Briar Hollow Lane. The report was clean. Too clean. He scrolled further. Notable prior incident. Household previously involved in child welfare investigation. Closed in 2013. Subject, Marissa Quinn. His blood ran cold. He looked up. The wall clock read 11:42 p.m. Most of the town would be asleep. But Luke knew one man who wouldn't be. Someone who'd always kept strange hours, and who'd worked Delia Quinn's first case. The farmhouse on Willow Bridge Road was the color of dust, peeling paint, rusted wind chimes. A pickup parked under a carport half swallowed by weeds. Luke knocked twice. The porch light came on. A deadbolt slid open. "Harland," said the man. "Didn't expect you." "Evening, how?" Luke removed his hat. "Need a few minutes, if you're up for it." Retired Detective Hal Cranby looked like he'd been carved from old wood and bad coffee. He stepped aside without comment. They sat in the kitchen. The walls were lined with handguns and police plaques. "I want to ask about Marissa Quinn," Luke said. Cranby didn't flinch. "Why?" the old man asked. "You digging graves tonight?" Her K-9 pointed out Marissa's plot during Emily's funeral. Cranby's fingers curled around his chipped coffee mug. "No one talks about that case anymore," he said. "Not even Delia. I'm not here to stir things up. But something's not sitting right. Emily's fire, and now this." Cranby sat back, eyes narrowing. Marissa died in 2013. Sickly kid. In and out of urgent care for months. Pediatrician flagged some things. Weight loss, bruises. School counselor made a report. DHS opened a file. But then Marissa caught something nasty. Pneumonia or flu variant. Went downhill fast. No autopsy? Luke asked. There was nothing definitive. Heart stopped. Lungs full of fluid. Case closed. Luke stared. But... Cranby's jaw tensed. But I remember how fast they buried her. No media. No obituary. Delia disappeared for weeks. When she came back, she was different. He rose and opened a drawer, pulling out a faded manila folder. I shouldn't have this. But something about it always rubbed me wrong. He slid it over. Luke opened it carefully. Inside were 3 photos. One of Marissa, eyes bruised, cheeks gaunt. Another of a moldy basement with a mattress on the floor. The third, a drawing. Child's crayon. A stick figure standing behind bars. Red X's over the mouth. Luke felt sick. Why was the case closed? Because the only witness was dead. And the mother was grieving. You want to be the guy who accuses a mother of... Cranby stopped himself. Let's just say it got buried. Luke stared at the drawing. What about the father? There wasn't one. Not on paper. Luke drove home in silence. Juno rode in the passenger seat. Still alert. The streets of Renville were dark. Empty. A town that slept like it had nothing to fear. But as Luke turned onto Main, his headlights caught a figure standing under the old train bridge. Alone. Soaked. Staring straight at him. Delia. He braked hard. Rolled the window down. You all right? He called. She didn't move. Didn't blink. For a moment, Luke couldn't speak. His fingers were still wrapped around the steering wheel like a vice. Juno let out another low growl. Her eyes locked on Delia's trembling frame under the bridge light. You said Emily wasn't supposed to be in the house. Luke said finally, voice tight. But she died in that fire. We saw the remains. There was dental confirmation. I know what the report said. Delia interrupted. Her tone wasn't angry. It was bone-tired. But you don't understand. That fire, it was an accident. A gust of wind rushed through the underpass, scattering leaves and dust. Luke stepped out of the cruiser slowly, Juno staying at his side. The woman in front of him wasn't the same Delia Quinn from the funeral earlier. Something had cracked. Delia wrapped her arms around herself and looked past him. The night before the fire, Emily came to me with a question, she said. She asked if I ever heard Marissa crying from the basement. Luke felt his chest tighten, and I told her that wasn't funny, that we don't talk about Marissa anymore. But Emily wasn't trying to be funny. She said she heard her, and that she followed the sound once, into the crawl space. Jesus, Luke whispered. I checked the next morning. Delia went on. The walls were cold. The door was locked. Everything looked normal. I thought maybe Emily had inherited something, like the same grief madness I've lived with. She laughed, but it cracked in her throat. But that night, the smoke alarm went off. Luke took a cautious step forward. You got her out? I pulled her through the window. The back bedroom. I swear to God, she was coughing, but alive. Then where? I left her in the yard to grab my phone. But when I came back, she was gone. Vanished. No tracks. Just gone. And the fire kept going. Luke's mind raced. You told the firefighters she was inside. Delia nodded. Because if I told them I didn't know where she was, they'd think I lost her. Again. Her eyes filled with something old and wet and terrified. The town never forgave me for Marissa. Not really. You think they'd forgive me for losing another daughter? Back at the station, Luke didn't clock in. He sat in the break room long after sunrise. Juno curled at his feet. He pulled up the fire department report again. They'd found remains in the corner of the kitchen, consistent with a child curled in a protective position. Severe charring. Only dental analysis confirmed identity. But something nagged at him. The dental chart was scanned from paper. An old record. One Emily had from second grade. He picked up the phone. Hey, it's Harlan. I need to talk to Dr. Kimberly Rice, county coroner. No, not official. Off the record. Tell her it's about the Quinn fire. An hour later, he stood in a sterile office above a morgue, the faint scent of antiseptic thick in the air. Dr. Rice was in her early 50s, tall, brisk, with a silver braid and eyes like polished stone. She listened without interrupting, arms folded as Luke explained what Delia had said. When he finished, she walked to a filing cabinet and pulled a folder out. I didn't want to say anything at the time, she murmured, but I remember feeling off about the remains. How so? The dental record used for confirmation was 7 years old. That's borderline unacceptable for positive ID. But no one questioned it because it fit. Tragic fire, single mother, known history of trauma. She handed him a photo. But this bothered me. Luke stared at the image. A charred jawbone. What should have been 10 baby teeth. There were only 9, she said. One was missing, never recovered. Could have been burned beyond retrieval, sure, but it was a red flag. Luke swallowed. You think this could have been Marissa? Rice hesitated. If someone buried the wrong body back then, if Marissa never really died, or if records were manipulated, then yes, it's possible. But Delia swears Marissa is dead. Trauma's a funny thing, Rice said. Sometimes it makes liars of the best people. Luke sat in his cruiser outside the old Quinn house, watching the burned-out husk from the road. The front had collapsed inward. The porch steps blackened. The roof punched open like a broken rib cage. Caution tape fluttered in the breeze. He pulled up the old report from 2013. Marissa's death. No siblings mentioned at the time. Delia was 26. Single mother. Teacher's aide. Quiet. Isolated. He scrolled to the welfare notes. Signs of possible Munchausen by proxy. Child appears overmedicated. Weight loss not attributable to diet. Frequent ER visits with vague symptoms. Luke closed the file. Come on, girl, he said to Juno. Let's walk. They stepped over the tape, boots crunching on broken glass and scorched floorboards. The air still held that smell, burned plastic, old ash, wet rot. Juno pulled ahead. Not erratic, not eager. Purposeful. She paused near a half-collapsed bookshelf, then moved toward the hallway. She stopped at a closet door, sniffed, whined. Luke opened it slowly. Inside, a trapdoor. He pried it up. A ladder, leading down. The crawl space was tighter than expected. only about 4 feet of clearance. Dirt floor, cobwebs, broken pipes, and something else. A mattress, molded, tattered, surrounded by old food wrappers, crayons, a cracked doll head. Luke exhaled slowly. Jesus. Juno whined louder now, then barked. Once, Luke turned. In the far corner, behind a stack of blackened boxes, was a small metal grate, like a vent, but larger. He crawled toward it, flashlight beam bouncing. The grate was loose. He pushed it aside and froze. A tunnel, hand-dug, less than 3 feet wide, and in the dirt near its mouth, a footprint, small, bare, recent. Luke called Cranby next. The old detective didn't sound surprised, just angry. You think Marissa's alive? I don't know, Luke said, but someone's been hiding down there. I knew something didn't sit right. Delia went dark for almost 6 months after Marissa's death. Wouldn't return calls. Moved out of town for a bit. Came back with a new job, a new therapist, and a whole new child. Luke gripped the phone tighter. You think Emily was a replacement? I think Marissa was a secret no one wanted to face, especially Delia. Maybe she kept her hidden. Maybe she snapped. Either way, don't trust anything she says until you know where that tunnel leads. He returned that night. No lights, no backup, just Juno and his Glock. The tunnel stretched 30, maybe 40 feet. The walls were rough hand-dug, braced with rotting planks. And at the end, another hatch. Luke pushed it open slowly. Above him, a concrete floor. The underside of what looked like an old woodshed. He climbed up. Juno followed. Inside, tools. A broken rocking chair. Empty food cans. And in the corner, a sleeping bag. A flashlight. A book. The wind and the willows. Luke turned slowly. His breath caught. On the wall were drawings. Hundreds. In crayon, charcoal, ash. Some of the same stick figure, with the X mouth. Others of fire. Eyes. A girl. A dog. And in the center, one drawing in bold, red strokes. A mother with no face. He didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. A shadow moved behind him. Then a voice, low, raw, shaking. You shouldn't have come here. Luke turned, gun raised. But his heart dropped. Delia. She wasn't holding a weapon. She was holding a photo. It was old. Curled edges. 2 girls. One older. One maybe 5, with stringy hair and scared eyes. They made me choose, Delia said, voice hollow. Back then, the therapist, the caseworker, they said I wasn't fit. That if I didn't give one up, I'd lose both. Luke stepped closer. So you faked it? Delia nodded. Marissa was never dead. I hid her. For years. But she changed. Got violent. Quiet. Like something broke in her. She started drawing the fire. The dog. Said she wasn't real anymore. Luke's pulse pounded. And Emily? She found the room. The truth. Started sneaking Marissa food. Books. I told her to stop. She didn't. Delia's face cracked open. Grief, guilt, fury all tangled. She's still out there, she whispered. Marissa. She ran after the fire. I think she lit it. I think she wanted to disappear for good this time. A sound outside. Branches. Luke turned. Juno growled. Someone was moving in the woods. Then a flash of red. A flurry of movement. And a high, clear whisper, barely audible. Mama. The whisper echoed like a memory. Mama. Soft. Young. Clothes. Luke spun toward the trees. The woods behind the shed pulsed with shadows. Narrow trunks and brambles. No moonlight. Just a faint red strobe of his flashlight's low battery. Juno was already at the door, tail stiff, ears pointed toward the dark. A low rumble built in her throat. Delia froze behind him, her mouth barely moving. She doesn't speak. Not anymore. Luke glanced back. You heard that? Delia nodded once. Pale as death. I've heard it every night since the fire. He raised his voice slightly, but kept it steady. Marissa? My name is Luke. I'm not here to hurt you. Silence. Then something moved, a flicker of red between the trees. Not clothing. A scarf? A ribbon? Juno barked one sharp warning. Luke stepped out of the shed. The night was thick and wet. He scanned the forest line. You don't have to run. I know what they said about you, what they did, but you're not alone anymore. Leaves rustled left. Then movement. Small, swift. He caught a glimpse of a face. Pale, hair matted, eyes too wide. Gone again. He took a step forward. Marissa, please. Emily's gone. Your mom is here. We want to help. Delia stepped up behind him. She won't come to you. She never came to anyone but Emily. Then she cupped her hands and tried with a voice cracked and raw. Rissy? Rissy, baby, it's me. You don't have to hide anymore. A beat. Then a cry. Not loud, but enough. Ragged. Real. To Luke's left, behind a pine tree. He moved carefully. Juno at his side. Delia behind him, shaking. And then he saw her. She crouched at the base of the tree, arms wrapped tight around her knees. No shoes. Face smeared with dirt. Her eyes darted between Luke and Delia and the dog. Marissa Quinn. She looked maybe 13, but smaller somehow, starved of years. When the light caught her face, Luke saw the scarring near her jaw. Faint, but there, like healed burns. Her left hand clutched a crumpled photograph. Delia gasped, That's for my nightstand. Marissa didn't speak. Luke crouched slowly, palm open. Hey, kiddo, that dog there? That's Juno. She's a good girl. She's been looking for you. Marissa blinked, her gaze dropping to the dog. She didn't smile, but she didn't run. She's not real, she whispered finally. Her voice rasped like paper. Emily said the dog would come if I waited. Luke swallowed. Emily told you that? Marissa nodded once. She's with the fire now, but she said I could fix it if I made the dog come. Delia's knees buckled. She dropped beside Luke, hand reaching out slowly. Rissy, baby, you're real, and I love you, and I'm sorry. I am so sorry for what I did to you. Marissa didn't answer. Juno crept forward, eased her head onto Marissa's bony knee, and something broke. Marissa folded forward, shaking, silent sobs, still clutching that photo. Luke didn't move, just let the girl cry. It was 2:14 a.m. when Luke finally called it in. He didn't give full details, just said a missing juvenile was recovered, found near the Quinn property. I'll explain more at shift. He wrapped Marissa in a thermal blanket and helped her into the back of the cruiser. Delia followed silently. Juno didn't leave Marissa's side. They took her to County General. A nurse tried to usher Delia into the waiting room, but Marissa clung to her sleeve like a lifeline, so they let her stay. It took an hour to get her cleaned, fed, hydrated, and another before the questions started. Luke stayed in the hallway, back against the wall. Cranby showed up just after dawn. No uniform, just flannel boots and a scowl. He lit a cigarette just outside the sliding doors. She talked. Luke nodded. Some. What's the damage? Physically? Malnourished. Burn scars. But she'll live. And mentally? Luke glanced through the window at the girl curled in the hospital bed. Delia sat beside her, reading softly from a battered copy of Charlotte's Web. She drew the fire. Luke said quietly, weeks before it happened. She said Emily kept bringing her crayons and books and food, told her she could come out if she was better. And the night of the fire? Luke exhaled. Emily had unlocked the trapdoor. They were together when the smoke started. Marissa says she begged her come. But Emily ran back in to grab something, a drawing. She died trying to save her sister's story. Luke nodded, and Marissa ran. Thought it was her fault. Thought maybe she'd been a ghost all along. Cranby flicked ash into the wind. The department's not going to like this. You think Quinn gets charged? Luke looked away. She kept a child locked underground, how? But also kept her alive. She lied to the state, faked a death, raised another kid with a secret in the walls. Cranby's mouth twitched. So that's a yes. Luke didn't answer. 3 weeks later, The town finally started talking. The fire report was amended. Emily Quinn's death was listed as accidental in origin, with open circumstances. Delia was placed under supervised review, pending psychiatric evaluation. Marissa was placed in temporary care, with the possibility of returning to Delia, if deemed safe. But Luke knew that wouldn't happen. Some things you don't come back from. Still, he visited, brought Juno each time. On one of those visits, Marissa handed him a new drawing. It was simple. A girl, a dog, a flashlight, and underneath, in shaky block letters, "Real now." 6 months later, on the anniversary of the fire, Delia showed up at the station, pale, thinner, but composed. She handed Luke a sealed envelope. "She wanted you to have this," she said. "For Juno." Luke opened it slowly. Inside, a lock of hair, a ribbon, and a note drawn in thick crayon strokes. "I heard her say thank you." In the smoke, he blinked hard, folded the paper. Outside, the wind stirred leaves across the parking lot, the same way it had that day in the cemetery. They never found out how Marissa survived those years, or what she really remembered. Some scars never explained themselves. But Juno never barked at her again. Not once. And every now and then, when the wind rushed in from the trees just right, Luke swore he could still hear the smallest voice, high and soft and grateful, whisper, "Mama,